If you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
Our guest today is Michelle Despax. Michelle's got an interesting background. She teaches the Alexander technique while she's interacting with riders and coaches. Her background's in dressage, show jumping and eventing, and she's specialising in dressage. She's an FEI rider, trainer and coach. How are you today, Michelle?
Very well, thank you, Glenys.
Good to talk to you, Michelle. I'm very interested as we get into it to talk to you some more about the Alexander technique, but can we start off with a favourite quote for now?
Yes, we can, yep. I've got a couple that I might spice through the interview, but
Sure.
The first one was Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, which is Susan Jeffries had a book published in 1987, and I don't know that I actually read that in 87, but I read it certainly in the 90s, and it changed my relationship with fear, I think, and with self-doubt. So there are many times in life when you doubt yourself, and that can be actually a really strong motivator to improve your life and or your work or change something completely. So it can be very motivating.
And I don't think anyone that's, ridden at any degree has never felt a little bit of fear, a little bit of fear as in riding that horse, riding in that situation, even riding in a competition. What if I do it badly? What if there's always, and I think if we do it anyway, we push through our boundaries a bit, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And you learn to embrace that and you learn to work with it. It's not a matter of dampening it down because fear is very valid, a very a valuable tool because it keeps you sharp.
Oh, definitely.
And it keeps you, and if you stay present, which is all the other concepts that are critical when you're riding and working with horses, you need to be very grounded and stay very present and manage fear, and you just keep working through it. So anyway.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Totally agree. I think very interesting to expand this conversation, but maybe another day. We've got heaps of questions for you, so
Yep, sure, keep going. Yep.
Okay, Michelle, I want to ask you a couple of questions here. So the first one is how you start with horses and what your first memories are, but then I'm going to go on and ask you how you started with the Alexander technique and what the reasons were. So we'll start off with your first memories of riding first.
Look, I was really lucky that my parents totally supported my passion with horses from a very small child, and we lived in Brunswick, inner Melbourne, and so I only saw ponies when they were in the park and I could pat them, but they did find a riding school in Elphington in Melbourne, and they took me riding there, and you could trot up and down the roads, and it was really just a riding school. And from that, they then bought me a pony, and I was able to keep it at Lower Plenty Pony Club, which was a club where you could adjust your pony there. And so that started my whole riding career. I was about 5 or 6, one of the youngest kids at Pony Club, and all I did was ride. I was never off the pony. I just rode the legs off everything. And so that was probably the beginning of just being in the right environment. I was very lucky because I was with knowledgeable people who cared about me and taught me correctly, because they just jumped all over you if you did the wrong thing. And you followed their example. They were good people. So I learned all the basic skills that perhaps are missing from riding today on some level. And the rest is history, really. I'm still involved in Pony Club now, all these years later. So.
Now, what about the Alexander technique? Because you didn't know that as a 5-year-old, but
No, I didn't.
Tell me how you've started with that.
I was a performance rider, I competed all through Pony Club and state championships, and I started teaching and so on. And so I guess if there's a whole career before becoming an Alexander technique teacher, I was already
Well, tell us
20.
a bit about that, because that's important, because it sort of takes you through that journey and then on to becoming a coach too, and being a professional and an FEI rider. And so tell us an outline of that as well. Yeah,
because that really, becoming an AT teacher was really as a result of my own pain levels and trying to manage continuing as a professional rider and competitor, and you just have to recover from injuries so often, and mentally as well as physically. So backtracking with the riding as a child, I was really in that environment where I was promoted good learning and I was safe. And so I became very competent and rode everything. And then people asked me to ride their horses and I was eventing and showing and I did everything. It was one of those, it was back in the day when you could just be a really good general rider. And then I was 20 or 19 or so and I bought 6 ponies. I was at university and I decided uni was okay and I was studying to become a teacher, no doubt, but I really didn't want to teach in the classroom. So I bought 6 ponies and I opened my riding school and I was inundated from the very beginning and, I had a very good business, running programs, educational programs for children and holiday camps and, the whole shebang. It was a massively busy time. Mm-hmm. And then concurrently I was 3-day eventing and then in my 30s I specialised into dressage. And that was when I trained the horses to FEI and competed and then became a level 2 coach and so on. So that's sort of the background of that. It sounds seamless, and I guess it was. It's really uninterrupted riding across all disciplines and riding all different breeds of horses and all different sizes, ponies. And then obviously warm bloods became the big thing in the 90s. Gert Donvig imported the first warm bloods and the rest is history. We're out there now. I'm coaching the young rider squad and they're all sitting on warm bloods that are trained to FEI and they're 15. The kids are 15 and 16.
But having the confidence, like you said, your first pony and you rode the legs off it and you start to ride different horses and ponies.
Yes.
I think sometimes that's just invaluable, to just be able to get on horses that you're not over-mounted on, because I think there is a real risk of over-mounting people on flash horses that are a bit hot, that they can get hot.
Yes, absolutely. And I had no pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was the other thing too. It was a different, at the risk of sounding like a really old person, it's just that, it's a very different world. The industry is entirely different, and I was lucky enough, and I still promote that. That's why I'm still involved in Pony Club, because essentially I believe in that ethos where you let kids develop, you let them be creative with their own pony, you let them have fun. That's critical, because in that fun is so much learning, and then you attach yourself to people that are passionate and good horse people, and then you follow their example. And so when the template for the riding school was easy, because I just never really grew up. I just stayed that child. And after doing all the FEI stuff, I've turned around and the last few years I've been competing a pony. So talk about revisiting my 8-year-old inner child, And actually Heath Ryan was, last time I met him, he was standing next to me and with the microphone, and I'm sitting on my pony. He's like 13.2 and he's 6 foot whatever. So we're about the same height and interviewing me. So on that pony. So I've gone full circle, which is quite nice. Which is quite nice.
It's nice.
I hope I've answered that question.
Yeah. Well, I think just the variety in the horse world. You're in the horse world. You're not in one particular bit. There's such a big variety, even within the riding and teaching and coaching.
Yes.
You can do it at all sorts of levels and ride professionally at all sorts of levels.
Well, and that's how you understand. That's how I seem to have the breadth and the depth of knowledge without necessarily having technical, having had lessons every day, whatever. I actually had a highly intuitive, it was learned, obviously. I wasn't born with that knowledge, but it just developed a lot more intuitively and a lot more creatively. If something didn't work, you had to find another way, and you always had to be kind to your pony. That came easily to me. That's part of my nature, and for that I'm very glad. And even as a competitive rider, I made choices about the people I trained with based on the way they rode and the way they interacted with their own horse. For me, it was not competition at all costs. And as a trainer and a coach, and a rider and a human being, that's reflected in the way I work with people and animals like my whole life.
Yep. For someone who is going to work with animals, work with horses and be in the horse career, what do you think the core skills or character traits are for them?
If they're going to work in the industry, they need to have a sound knowledge base. They need to have a skill set. So if they're going to ride, they need to be able to ride. If they want to be a rider, you have to have the skill set. Now, that involves being incredibly disciplined, to learn your craft, to be an independent, have an independent seat. So to have the skill, then after that you need to be rigorous in your own application to excellence in your own personal life. You need to have an excellent work ethic. You need to situate yourself with people who have integrity so that you continue to operate around people who are respectful of horses. You need to be very strong, like robust physically. You need to be fit. You need to... Gee, I'm giving you a lot of things, aren't I? But is that sort of helping?
I think that gives, and it's for the listeners, for people that want to get into the horse industry, that it's not a fairy tale. It really is a job.
Oh,
and
no.
It really is a career.
Oh, gee, it's not romantic. It's really hard work. You often are working long hours after, if clients, if you're working at a riding school, you're doing as much work prior to a client coming to when you actually, if you're lucky enough to then be the one who has to go and get changed and then stand in the arena and you clean jodhpurs and actually teach the lesson. And then afterwards, unless you can pass the pony to some strapper or other minion in the stable block, it'll be you that actually untacks the pony and puts it away. And it might be you the next day that is actually retraining the pony, or the horse, obviously, not just the pony, but the horse, and fixing up, whatever the client has done the day before. I mean, riding schools or working in yards is really, really hard work. It's often working alone. You're unsupervised, so you need to have enormous initiative. You need to not be lazy, and you need not to be supervised in order to work. So there are really core personality traits, and that's without even being a competition rider. That's just working in the industry. Now, if you want to be a competition rider, oh goodness, you need then to treble your skill level. Like, you need to be impressive and you need to be very grounded and present and have all the points on the board, and then people ask you to ride their horses. And or they ask you to teach them, or they see you riding a horse and they say, did you break, if you broke it in, you say yes, and they say, I want you to do that horse for me. And that's how I got all my work in the beginning. I'm not breaking in or doing that sort of work now, but I have also done that work too. I'm actually breaking my pony in harness, so because I can, because he's a great pony and I can. So it's really about learning. Yep. Say yes, put your hand up all the time and say yes, 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 and let the horses also teach you. You'll learn from horses. I've given you a massive...
I think it's given us a really good idea. And the next question is, what's the best thing about working in the horse industry?
Oh, goodness, so many things. So rewarding, so enriching, such hard work. However, it doesn't feel like it at the time. I mean, I only say that now because I look back and because I'm a little bit older, I get more tired now than I did, obviously in my 20s or 30s. And the ability to work with horses is a gift, and for horses to respond to you. And that interaction, irrespective of whether you teach a lesson or whether you compete, or just to be connected on a day-to-day, moment by moment with horses, they're my co-workers. They're my staff. Do you know what I mean? I don't. They're my. Obviously, I have a boss. I have client. Every client's my boss because I'm only as good as my last ride or my win or my last horse that I produced or my last lesson. The industry's fickle, so people become flavour of the month. You have to put your ego outside the arena and just continue to do the right thing by the horse. You have to follow due process. You have to... Am I making sense? You have to follow classical training principles. It's not... A long-term career in the industry is a gift, and if horses continue to come up to you in the paddock every day and want to be around you, that's proof that you're doing something right.
Yeah, it's wonderful being paid for something that other people have to pay to do.
Well, I run clinics now and have done for many, many years on teaching people to become grounded and to, so all that play with horses and groundwork and so on, that's become a bigger component of my educational interaction with people, because increasingly people are not necessarily going to compete. They want a companion, or their horse is their companion. So in one direction, obviously, we are highly competitive and I'm an elite coach, but on the other side, I'm essentially working with people, and I've travelled into a therapeutic field, working with people who have got mental health issues or are needing to be grounded and around horses because of their own personal histories. So I've travelled, a really big path in my education of horses and rider.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, because you're quite successful within the industry. What do you think you've got as a regular habit that makes you successful? So it's something that you find that you're doing again and again, and it's that over a long period of time that's contributed to making you successful.
Me or making other people successful?
Making you successful.
Okay, because they are quite two different things, and you need to be able to do both, because sometimes in the process of making other people successful, you neglect your own, or you might compromise your own, dare I say, integrity even, which is a terrible thing, but sometimes people chase success or notoriety at the expense of the genuine love of the horse. So that's a whole other training sort of philosophy. However, within myself, I think absolute faith and conviction that what I do with horses is right, that it works. I'm not saying that my way is the only way, I didn't mean that. I'm a classical rider, so I'm not reinventing the wheel. I just ride well every day, every time I ride. I follow ride the horse forward and straight on your line. I follow classical principles, and I'm humble, as in I really value my interaction with the horses. So, yeah.
Now, you talked about the people, going back to Pony Club, you said you're around a lot of knowledgeable people. And, to have the career that you've had, you've obviously had some help along the way and people that you've learned from. Who do you think's influenced you and helped you in your career?
Yeah, look, a couple of people have been instrumental. Like from when I was really little, as I said, that environment that allowed me to be creative but kept me correct was critical. And then after that, we weren't very wealthy, so I didn't have lessons every week like lots of other kids did. And I had a lesson once a month, I should say, which was massive. And that was with Jack Matthews, who was attached at the time to Victoria Police. So it was quite military-like. Our early classical riding here in Australia was quite military. Franz Moringa is another notable person. After that, Malcolm Barnes, when I was riding FEI, Malcolm Barnes, who would be in his 80s now and, a very well-known Australian rider, he was marvellous, very correct and courteous, always very courteous and classically trained. Manolo Mendez has been instrumental for his anatomical knowledge, among other things, but that's what he really brought home to me, the anatomy of the horse and how critical that is, because my background is not medical. I don't have, I'm academic, but it's education. I have no medical background. So, and that has drawn me into areas of equine physio and had given me a much bigger understanding anatomically of the biomechanics of movement. So because I'm an intuitive rider and I ride with feel, I've been blessed with that sort of natural feel, which is critical as a rider. You can learn it, but I actually was one of my strongest natural talents, if you want to say that. And obviously you have to still work hard and develop technique. I know all that. But people like Manolo is a lot more intuitive as a rider. Malcolm Barnes I found very classical and technical. And so different people at different times when I was obviously seeking an input. But I didn't actually go week in, week out and train with anybody, even when I was riding FEI. Glenn Fryer also. I had some very good lessons with Glenn Fryer, who is a well-known Australian rider and trainer. So, but it was nothing where it was the person, mentoring me, holding my hand, doing... I was not as dependent on coaches as some of my students are on me, if that makes sense. The industry's shifted a great deal, and now there are very good coaches everywhere, whereas when I was growing up, there was not really a career in coaching, if that makes sense. The industry didn't exist in the way it does now.
No,
that's true. And I've been lucky to be buoyed along from the infancy to how it is now, and still being involved with young riders on the inter-school squads and instrumental in, years ago, in putting in programs, the VET, vocational educational training programs in schools in the 90s. I was instrumental in putting that in place. All sorts of programs that it was consultancy, really. It was consultancy work without being paid, without actually the gig. It wasn't a professional gig. People just picked your brains and you were just available. So that other thing about staying open, you asked about a core value or something that is about staying very generous. And I think most good professional people are incredibly especially educationalists, I think, where you want to make a difference and you actually have always believed in personal development before it became a trendy thing to say or do. And you were a life coach before there was even the word life coach, because you were always mentoring somebody because you didn't know you were. You just...
That's what you
by
do.
Virtue of... Yeah, exactly. By virtue of just doing what you do with passion, just other people look at you and they're totally inspired, and they may say something and you look at them and you laugh because you just don't see yourself. You're too busy doing.
You're not doing it to inspire others. You're just doing
it. Exactly.
Yeah.
You're just doing it because you do. It's what you do, and I feel very blessed that I've been able to be like that. That's why my career has taken so many turns, and I've not just been, say, training FEI horses from the 90s or whatever, which would be a wonderful career choice, that it just didn't happen like that for me. And I followed it like a rabbit down, a bit Alice in Wonderland, a bit down the hole. And I just continued. Yeah, so I hope that can perhaps inspire somebody that's not sure, if they want a career in horses. You just got to be, you don't know sometimes. I just knew because every time I went to leave the horses, I always came back. That for me, it wasn't that I wanted a career in horses. I just never stepped away from them long enough for anything else to make enough impact for me to follow it.
What about horses themselves? Have you got horses who've influenced you and helped you in your career?
Oh, gosh. Oh, so many. Because I've ridden so many and trained so many horses for other clients, and also because when you're teaching or you go to Pony Club, you see another 20 horses that day, and so and you see some darling horses all the time, just doing a stellar job carting.
What about one horse? Who was your first FEI horse?
Gee whiz, Bulladella, who was a sacked eventer, one of my students. He just stopped jumping. So, but he could move, and he was a warm blood type. He wasn't warm blood, but he was very typey and had good movement. So I started with him and trained him right through. And in a couple of years, we were riding advanced, and that was with Malcolm Barnes. So that, and then later on, FEI, Press St George, and so I had a couple of horses after that. I had Bodicea, and there were a number of other horses that I trained, which was great. There have been a couple of horses that I've worked with clients, and they were their own personal horses, extremely difficult horses, where if you had have been more and more and more physical with them, increasingly domineering, if you had have taken that training process with them, it would have ended in disaster. The horses would have imploded, basically, or hurt someone. And that actually taught me, as a younger person in my 30s, that it had very little to do with strength. That was the beginning of understanding that I had to think smarter, not ride harder. And that sort of, psychologically, that was profound because, there is quite a lot of strength obviously involved in being, that's the other thing, you have to be fit and you have to keep your weight down, as in you have to be able to move if you want to be serious with horses. So I learned then the value of that, of not trying to persuade something, or force, obviously. When I say persuade, it's code for force. A horse, 500 kilos, or because I'm still only 50-odd kilos now, so that's not going to work. And also it made me feel sick at heart if I was around people, or if I chose a path, or if I was directed, in training, or people, sometimes you need to get the job done. I'm quite familiar with that. You need to be clear and horses need to respect you, but there are ways and ways of doing that, and you have to be very careful not to undermine the enormous trust that horses put in you all the time. So there's a very strong duty of care for the rider, if you're a coach, and obviously for the horse. And so it is not a result at all costs. So I learned some really critical life lessons that I then was able to transform into my own philosophy and into my working daily practice. So famous horses, I hope I answered that. My current pony, whiz-bang little pony, who's really doing some great elementary medium work, just for the pure pleasure of it. And I give him to kids to ride to Pony Club if they want, or, really, he's just an outstanding little chap, So
this is the one you're teaching to go to harness?
Yes. He's currently at a holiday camp with a colleague She needed an extra pony, so I just said, yep, okay, obviously I trust her and she has enormous professional integrity, I don't just willy-nilly loan my pony because he's my family,
Yeah.
But I think it's very important. I do understand horses need to live in a herd, so he goes off there. It's like holiday camp for him. He goes and lives in a herd and just hangs out with kids and gets groomed and kids pop around on him and jump and then he can come home and be the serious whatever I want from him. He's adaptable, would be fair to say.
Yep.
So,
what do you think your proudest moment's been?
I have lots of proud moments. When my clients do well, I'm thrilled for them, a bit like a parent, can puff out your chest and you get really thrilled for their achievements because it's their journey, but you've contributed to that. Proudest moments would be some really good performances when I was competing FEI, like to get, 60% or whatever it was at the time, or 65%, and was a big deal because there's a lot of training involved for seemingly little reward, Riding at the Masters Games a couple of years ago, my pony was in really good company, the only pony in the field, and we got 3 gold medals and silver and got 70% and plus. So from a performance point of view, I was tickle pink and I was astounded, would be fair to say, because, he's only a pony, so he had to work probably a little bit harder to to shine in next to the big warm bloods, but he did. So, yeah.
Well, with those proudest moments, I'm sure you would have had challenges. What do you think your biggest challenge has been?
To stay self-motivated. It's a tough industry, and even when, a rider goes well or you've been involved with a rider for a period of time, that person or that rider or horse might benefit from moving away from you, training with somebody else, or you need to be big enough to magnanimous enough and to understand that. That takes a bit of maturity, a bit of wisdom, and not take it necessarily personally, Also, you need to know your limitations. I'm speaking about young coaches that may or may not even become level 1 coaches, but don't punch above your weight, Don't try and teach something that you can't do.
Yes,
you know what I mean? That's just daft. But it happens a great deal, actually. That's exactly why we have this pyramid system of level 3, level 2 and level 1 coaches. And you have to have ridden, back in the day, the criteria.
You should be. And people, if they're looking for a coach, they should go, right, well, who's already been there, done that I can go that's going to help guide me along the way. Yeah.
That's exactly right.
And be able to move on, get to a certain level and think, great, this coach has got me there, but that's as far as they've gone. And who would they recommend that I go to? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so as a coach, you have to, that's the other thing about that integrity thing, and enough faith in yourself that there's plenty of work out there. If you're any good, you will work as a coach. If not, you'll have to have another job as well.
Yeah, you keep getting better and better, so you're always better than your clients.
Well, that's the other thing too. One would hope you can ride better at a higher level than your clients. But, so the biggest challenge, being self-motivated, because you do lose clients. People do change coaches, and you do, even if someone's winning, sometimes it's actually really, really challenging. People are winning with you, not that, winning is important. Well, it is, because they come to you and they say, I want to improve your performance. So off you do duly go, and over a period of weeks or months or whatever they do, and then they stop riding with you because they think they've learned enough, which is great because they have up to their point. But I'd like really taking, once I've honed their basic skill set, adhere to the classical principles, forward and straight on your line in a rhythm, you want to then take those basics and you want to carry that person through. And sometimes they're not that ambitious, or they just want to ride for pleasure. Or so sometimes it can be a little bit, on that level, a bit frustrating. So you have to just let go. You have to be able to go, that's what the client wants. Or when a client sells a horse that you really like, or when a client's horse dies, that's really sad. I've lost my own horses. I've had colic, as in my horse. I had a super horse, probably one of my best horses in a mare I bred, and she had colic and she died and left me with a 3-month orphan foal. And so those challenges. A couple of years ago, I actually broke my neck, which sounds very dramatic, and it was. I broke 3 vertebrae, and I was immobilised for 3 or 4 months, and it was very frightening. and I just one foot after the other, literally, in recovery, and I recovered, and I was able to teach again and move and stand and then ride, and I'm now able to ride again every day if I choose. So that was a really big challenge because it threatened my whole work, obviously, but my life. That really, because I'd never been hurt that bad before, but accidents happen, so,
And that's how you overcame it then, just being motivated to just keep taking one step and another step and another step?
Absolutely. Well, there's only one way, and that's forward. You don't...
Yes.
Without sounding trite, as long as you draw breath, you've only got one way to go, and that's get up and get going. So that's probably why I don't ride. I've chosen now not to ride youngsters or break any youngsters in, or because I don't need to be doing it. I've mentored enough coaches and produced enough riders, and I'm surrounded by enough good young people that I can handball something tricky. I've got other skills, and I have done actually for a really long time. I've got many other skills that I can be employing without putting myself at unnecessary risk. And that was a very big thing to accept, because I actually love riding and working with tricky horses, and I'm very not dangerous ones. That's different again. I just mean horses that need a little more time, and so I really like that.
Yes,
because it's very satisfying. But I recognise now that I'm not bulletproof, actually. So that was probably my most recent large challenge. But here I've bobbed up, as you do, and so you need a lot of resilience in life, mental and emotional resilience, and you need to have faith that it will all work out somehow in the end.
All right. Now, I want to talk to you about the Alexander technique, because I was going to ask you, just about how you came across the technique and how you think it can help influence horses and riders and improve that combination, the horse-rider combination, and what you do within your teaching and training. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yep, I've been talking lots about that. You might need to interrupt me and then redirect me, because there's a lot of questions.
We can get you back for something a little bit more in-depth, but I think just if you can briefly go over it for now, and then we can probably get you back another time and go into it a lot more depth. That'd be good.
Yeah, that'd be terrific, because it is it's a wonderful technique. It's a learned skill, and as an educator and a teacher of the technique, I run workshops and clinics to teach the technique. And once you've learned it, you own that skill, so it's portable. You take it with you. It's part of your life. So it is a life skill. As a horse rider, I've taken the technique, which is a standalone technique, and I teach it to people from all walks of life. But because I'm a rider, I guess I've specialised in equestrian activity, and it makes a profound difference to the way a person sits, moves, walks, even talks, and even thought processes. And so it has a massive psychological and physiological effect on the individual over time, which has naturally a profound effect on the horse, because we're sitting on it, leading it or working with it in hand. So those skills of self-management, breathing, posture, mental acuity, spatial proprioception, all of those things that we have in spade loads, perhaps as a younger person, as we age or as we have injury or as we become more fearful in life, or we lose some of that capacity to respond to life, and we find we're not moving as well. People have injury. So I work with people in a very interesting, unique and individual way for each individual. So
how's it improved yourself? What was your story? Because you came across it and it's prolonged your riding life.
Oh, it has. Yeah, it did. Richard Weiss was very well known for promoting the technique some years ago, and my interest was piqued and my curiosity really, and pain is a very strong motivator. So in my late 30s, I was quite sore, which does happen as riders, not just because you've banged up, but because just the daily wear and tear of riding 3 or 4 or 5 horses a day, or cleaning stables and teaching and. Your body, your mind can only be so strong. Your body does start to break down, and that's without any injury. That's just your daily work schedule, let alone, running a farm or doing housework or having children or all the other things you might do as well. So I was starting to run out of puff, and I was a little alarmed because I loved riding and I didn't particularly want to stop riding. For me, I'm hardwired to ride. Other people can stop riding quite early and then keep teaching. Well, for me, my riding actually informed my teaching, in a really depthful way. So this holistic approach to receiving sensory information and heightening awareness and watching horse behaviour and so on, all of that stuff was terribly interesting to me, and I immersed myself in the technique. I met the director of one of the schools in Melbourne and had an interview, and he was interested in having me on as a student. It's a 3-year training course. So for me, I was in a lot of pain, and it helped. It was more than just I needed more than just going and having a massage or sitting in a thermal spa, a spring somewhere, or even medication. I needed a whole new way of moving, and that's really where it started. So it's learning to work with your posture and what you're doing defensively and all your body language. And over time, my chronic lower back pain completely disappeared. And so when I work with riders, they invariably come to me with all sorts of low-grade physical issues and or quite chronic, but they still can ride in a fashion, but they're holding so much muscular tension. So it's about teaching the rider to recognise that, and so they have to be open to that. So there's a lot of openness required, but often I'm changing things the rider is actually unconscious of. I'm working with so many things at once, and when you do that highly intuitively and with great respect to the rider and the horse, things just fall away. Tensions fall away, and often pain issues start to resolve themselves once the rider becomes conscious of where they are spatially, how they are sitting on the horse, their balance, their breathing, their thought processes. I have a background in neural linguistic programming as well, so I'm very interested in how our mind works and how our body follows our thinking. But on a personal level, I had an enormous recovery from chronic pain just by learning to move differently and using myself in a different way.
That's good.
I was so enamoured with the technique. After a very short time, I decided to train. So I devoted 3 years of my life, and I still had the riding school, and in that time I became a level 2 coach and a coach educator, and I had a lot of balls in the air, but my overall health was stupendous, really. I mean, I had a new injection of life, and it turned my riding, revolutionised my riding ability, which sounds pretty amazing, but it did. It really did. And it gave me the shot in the arm that propelled me this next 20 years, and here I am. And as a consequence, I run all sorts of clinics and workshops, and I teach. I've taught in Spain, and I've taught in New Zealand and around Australia.
Oh, hang on a sec. Let me interrupt to let people know about the horse industry qualifications at onlinehorsecollege.com. If you have a look at the flexible options, there's online theory, and the practical components can be completed by video or with a qualified expert in your area. That website again is onlinehorsecollege.com. Okay, thanks. And we're definitely going to have to get you back then to talk about it some more.
Oh, okay.
And we will. Yeah.
I hope that made sense.
Yeah,
because I'm not following any notes.
No, it just gets me a bit more curious, actually. So we definitely have to get.
It's a hands-on. Look,
yep.
I'll read you the blurb. Okay, this is my blurb from one of my promotional things.
Yep.
As adult riders, we have aches and pains that can be exacerbated when we ride. The Alexander technique is a gentle, hands-on coaching session. So it is a tactile, hands-on on the person that teaches you, the person, the rider or the individual, to recognise unnecessary muscular tension while they move or ride. So it promotes awareness of how to release unnecessary tension, a useful skill that can prevent further injury in everyday activity. It can strengthen your riding position, your balance. Your confidence, obviously, is hardwired to your balance. So really less is more. So I had a promotional thing a few years ago, ride smarter, not harder, So I run lots of clinics, and obviously too when I'm coaching individuals, they may or may not know I'm a teacher of the technique. It doesn't matter. They just come, I'm a level 2 coach, whatever. And I just work with them using, as you do as an older coach or whatever, or a versatile coach, you bring all of your professional skill and life skill to the arena. And so that's the other thing, young people today, you need to make sure you're working with coaches that have got a really big experience behind them and that they're happy to share it, because you're going to get a lot more than your standard sort of lesson. You're going to learn more than you ever thought. You don't even know you're learning it. It seeps in, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
And that is the value of, that's probably why I mentor and I train other coaches and stuff now, because obviously I'm articulating, I'm well aware of the impact you have on others, but when you're receiving information as a young person, you're not aware of that. You're just like a bunny, you just tootle along and good influences just seep into you. And then they stay there forever. They're permanent. It's permanent learning.
Well, what about a compliment something to complement their learning and their training, like a book? Have you got one that you could recommend?
Yeah, there is quite a good book. Sally Tottle is an English woman and wrote a book for Alexander Technique, called Body Sense, and that is quite a good one because it does work with horse riders specifically. But you can also go to your library and read about the Alexander Technique. There are many good books about that, or Google it or whatever. Which makes me think I need to write a book as well. However,
in your spare time.
However, there's another. Yeah, that's right. Next lifetime. There's another. Charles de Courcy you may have heard of him too, an American rider and coach, a remarkable, eloquent writer and speaker, and he has written a number of books. Anything by him is very good, but The Athletic Development of the Dressage Horse I found particularly a very readable book. So part philosophy, of course, as well as, big on technique and, patterned riding and so on. And there are any number of mindfulness books now, The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle, and a whole lot of other books, personal development books that are very helpful. But hopefully those couple...
I think that's good. Yeah.
Might inspire people to think outside the square,
Yes. Now, Michelle, what are you looking forward to?
I'm running a few residential retreats. I run at 3 or so a year that are 3-day or 5-day, where people come at my property here, Acacia Park, where people come with their horses, and we do yoga and meditation, suppling exercises for riders. Obviously, you ride. I teach people to ride as well. So it's not just like a resort. But
you're using the yoga and the meditation as well as Alexander Technique, and that's the holistic approach that you're using.
Alexander Technique, visualisation practices, performance riding, because there are a lot of issues with anxiety, and people can feel very pressured riding. Once they start to compete or develop technique, they can sometimes forget why they rode.
Yes.
Like if they get bogged down in the technicality of riding, and you need to always revisit the reasons why you rode, and hopefully it's because you adore horses and not because you're chasing that gold medal or whatever it is, Winning is a byproduct of, living a good life or riding well, So success comes in many forms.
Yep, for sure, for sure. All right, so just in a few sentences, can you summarise your philosophy with horses?
What I've got is a few snapshot, one-line things.
Sure.
Does that rather than I mean, from a classical point of view, like training, just go out every day and adhere to the basics, which means riding your horse forward and straight on your line, in a rhythm, with relaxation. So that's your standard sort of thing you do. Every day, stay present. Every day, be grounded. Be adaptable with your horse. But you can only be adaptable if it comes from a strong skill set base, and then you can try and find another way. But you can't improvise if you don't know what you're doing. That's actually dangerous. Horses need you to be consistent, work on one thing at a time, be process-driven, honour the process, follow due process, but hold a clear outcome so that you know what you're doing, so that you can reward the horse, even when there's a very small trifactor from the horse. You must reward it, because the horse has no idea what you're trying to achieve. So you have to be kind, and you have to listen to the horse. You have to watch. You have to really be respectful to that horse, because you want him to join up with you tomorrow. Remember, every day sets up the ride for the next day. So if you lose your temper, or if you do you block with a horse? And it does happen. Actually, increasingly, people are stressed. Actually, young riders, I see that more, not older people. I see that a lot more in younger riders that are under enormous pressure from...
enormous pressure to be in a hurry, to get there.
Yes, they don't understand it might take you 5 to 10 to 12 years or 15 years to actually be a very, 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 very good general rider, and then you can specialise. So it's difficult for a kid at 14 to specialise at 16. It's sometimes not... It's not realistic, and yet we seem sometimes, when I say we, collective we, I don't, but, there's pressure on coaches too to perform. But I must admit I've always ducked, and I don't care about that. I just do what's right. So, and then if I lose the gig, I lose the gig. I don't care. Yeah. It's never mattered. So I sound a bit arrogant like that, but I'm not. It's actually just because the horse matters more than anything.
I think you'll find a lot more experienced coaches, that will say that as well. And it's
good.
I think that's just the general feeling that I get from a lot of experienced coaches, and always have, once they've been in it and realise that really having the horse on your side and on your team is the best way forward.
Of course. Well, you can't move forward from that. You can't move forward from that. So that's what I said about every day you ride, you're setting up tomorrow's ride.
Yeah, exactly.
And so what may not have come today, if you repeat the process the next day and the next day, the horse will actually get it and give you like a light bulb moment. And sometimes I'd like to do a drawing of where, the horse has a bubble, the air bubble, and the horse is speaking, and the horse wants to give the rider the manual how to ride, so that the horse can actually get on with the job of carrying the rider. So the other thing, don't add pressure to tension when you're training. Don't exactly that. Don't add more pressure to whatever the existing tension in the situation is. And that applies to training young riders too. Don't keep pressurising them. They're doing their best. Don't keep adding. When in doubt or difficulty, downscale and exercise. Make it so that the horse always feels that he's done a great job. And obviously the person, that applies to a young rider too. Or you have to always make sure that you're nurturing that person, because it's a person. It's not a machine.
That's right. Michelle, how can people contact you?
Oh, via my Facebook page, Acacia Park, or personally on Facebook, Michelle Despax, or email, which is really good too if you want it a bit more personal, mdespax@hotmail.com.
Okay, and those details will be in horsechats.com, so horsechats.com/Michelle Despax, or just search Michelle on Horse Chats. Michelle, great talking to you today. I'm looking forward to getting you back again, but I've really enjoyed your approach and the way that you use your holistic approach to improve that horse-rider combination. I think the work that you're doing in the industry is great, and look forward to talking to you again sometime soon.
Oh, thank you. It's been wonderful. Thanks very much.
Good. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, wait. Before you go, if you're an equestrian coach or a horse riding instructor, or even if you aspire to be one, have a look at the free video series for horse riding instructors on the Horse Chats website. Go there now. Have a look. horsechats.com.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.